Hello and welcome once again to Growing Guelph, the podcast where we meet people helping shape a more compassionate and connected Guelph. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Sloggett, and today on the podcast I'm joined by Grace Sant. Grace is the Host Farms Outreach and Education Manager at the Donkey Sanctuary of Canada. Grace and I talk about all things donkey, why the donkeys need a sanctuary, how donkeys differ from horses and mules, and the inspiring story behind the sanctuary's founding and growth. It's a conversation full of heart, care, and community, and it's happening right now. Today I'm joined by Grace Sant from the Donkey Sanctuary. Grace, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Grace, sorry, what's your title at the Donkey Sanctuary?
Yeah, so I am Host Farm Manager and Education Outreach. So it's two different things that I'm kind of involved in.
Well, that's very exciting. I'm excited to kind of get into all things about the Donkey Sanctuary today. Why don't we start off with you and your origin story at the Donkey Sanctuary? How did you get to become involved at the sanctuary? What was your educational path and how did you start there?
Yeah, it's very unique, I guess. So I graduated from the University of Guelph in 2019. I got my bachelor there in equine management. So I did join right after graduation. I was very unfortunate, and the equine training position. So I got to work hands-on with the donkeys and mules.
And I'm just saying this for our audience who might not know, equine is like the Latin scientific name for the family or the species that horses, donkeys, or zebras also in that category?
Yeah, zebras are included in there, equid, yeah. And mules, of course.
And mules? So I guess that's your origin story into the Donkey Sanctuary. What about the Donkey Sanctuary? So it's officially called the Donkey Sanctuary of Canada. And we should say it's located just outside of Guelph, I think, like just outside the city limits in Puslinch, technically.
Yeah, we're in Puslinch, but yeah, just outside of Guelph, because not many people know where Puslinch is.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. So what inspired its creation and how has it evolved since that time?
Yeah, so Sandra Patey started the Donkey Sanctuary of Canada in 1992. It had some very humble beginnings. Sandra and her husband, David, had bought the property and in the hopes of just living the country life and enjoying their dogs and animals. They originally started with 3 donkeys. Like a lot of people who got started or add donkeys to their farm, they're just looking to add some quiet protective animals to the property. So they started with Apache, Bronwyn, and Riley were the first 3 donkeys. And very quickly, then when their neighbors found out that they had donkeys and were looking to rehome their own, or farmers who found that, their donkeys weren't being good guardians, because unfortunately a lot of people do get into donkeys with that hope, and they're just not equipped for that. So
where did that start from? Like, where did the idea that donkeys are good livestock guardian animals?
Yeah, it's a great question. So donkeys are originally desert creatures. In the desert, there's very few resources available for donkeys, so it's very barren. They survive off of roughage. There's not too many water sources. So in terms of their innate nature, they can be a little bit more protective compared to horses, for instance. They live in like savannas where there's abundance of grass. If there's a predator chasing them, they can just run off and find another watering hole, no problem. So donkeys by nature, they do have a bit more of a fight instinct compared to the flight. They'll take a moment to kind of stop, evaluate the situation, and then decide if it's worth leaving the resources that they have. So they can be a little bit more territorial by nature in that sense, but we as humans like to take advantage of that, and we'll house them with other livestock like cattle in hopes of that they'll protect the herd for predators.
Right.
But that's not quite what they're doing. They're more so just protecting their resources.
It's interesting how humans have lived with donkeys so long that they're an animal species that we have like behavioral tropes and things like that associated with them. I mean, this is true of a lot of our long-term animal husbandry animals, like sheep, and all of the qualities of sheep that, when we're comparing people to sheep and things like that, we assign them that. And I think with donkeys, I'm trying to think of the major stereotypes that come to mind. I guess there's things associated like with not donkeys exactly, but like with mules and things like that. We're stubborn as a mule and phrases like that. And some of those would obviously have roots in the actual behavior of the animals too. And some of them are going to be misconceptions, kind of like you
Yeah.
said, that donkeys can stand their ground. So it makes people think, oh, that would be good, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily defense oriented. It just means that they're not going to run away right away.
Exactly. Yeah, they take a moment just to stop and think and decide if it's worthwhile. Definitely donkeys and mules get the stereotype of, they're being stubborn or they're not intelligent because they're just standing there. I would argue the opposite, that they're quite intelligent to not always comply with what we're asking of them. We as humans ask some terrible things from them, or just things that don't make sense. So, for example, like walking through a puddle of water, like our depth perception, we know it's only like an inch deep. Versus a donkey, if they see a puddle of water, they don't know how deep it is. Their vision is very different from ours. So they're going to stop and not want to step in it. So, yes, we might call them stubborn for that, but no, they just have a high sense of self-preservation. So,
That's
yeah.
interesting. And I guess the opposite, like their cousin species of horses have, at least some of those instincts can be taken out of horses so that they will sort of blindly trust that their rider is like guiding them through something that they can handle.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, donkeys aren't riding animals to begin with, right? Like,
Donkeys, yeah, they can only carry about 15% of their body weight, so it's not very much. So, yes, if a kid were to sit on them, we, the sanctuary, don't advocate for the animals to be working. But compared to like a horse, for instance, they can carry up to 25% of their body weight, so they're much more adept for that kind of skill. But yeah, horses and donkeys, so they share the same evolutionary, same relative over 2 million years ago. So that's a long time for evolution to have taken place and created two separate species.
yeah.
So that's a really great common misconception that donkeys are just long-eared horses, because 2 million years is a long time to create two separate species entirely.
That is really interesting. And how, I mean, like within that 2 million years, that's basically like the entire diversification of the like human species, right? And
Yeah.
our split. Things like that. And then I can kind of remember this from drawing from my time at the University of Guelph and studying biology and some evolution classes and that, where like in terms of evolutionary processes and just the diversification of things, looks can be deceiving. Where, like you said, we look at horses and we look at donkeys and we say, oh, there's a lot of similarities here, but like that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not very different animals suited for different environments. And well, speaking of, I guess, the donkey sanctuary, last week you gave myself, my wife, and my in-laws a tour of the sanctuary, and it wasn't my first time there. I had gone. It wasn't our first date, but it was one of the first dates that my wife and I went on. And actually, the first time I met my mother-in-law was going on the tour of the Donkey Sanctuary. And it left a real impression on me then, and revisiting it last week was a really nice experience. It was also just such a perfect scenic kind of day after many cloudy days we had had beforehand. And something that was clear of touring the facility was just how much love and care goes into every detail of the habitat that you've created for these animals. How do you and the team there ensure that there's such a high standard of care for the animals, both physically and emotionally for them?
Yeah, thank you, because we have worked really hard to create a facility and environment specifically catered towards the donkeys. So I'm glad to hear that when people visit, they can feel and see that kind of serenity that we provide there. So we have a dedicated team of animal care staff, farm manager, animal health manager. She lives on site, so she's on call 24/7 for the donkeys. So if we have any health cases that they need attending to overnight, they're able to provide that. We have a full team of dedicated volunteers as well. So the paddocks get picked every single day. I know poop picking sounds really boring, but it's actually a really valuable health tool indicator as well. Donkeys, they need to be constantly passing manure, so knowing what it looks like and making sure everybody's doing it is very important for their health, as well as maintaining a clean environment.
That's such a good example of how that there's really no such thing as like low skilled work, because even something as like you said, as base or as simple as just shoveling donkey manure comes with it the opportunity to be like assessing their health and providing like a very valuable on the ground like insight into like catching something.
Absolutely, yeah. Because if they're not passing manure, they can be colicking is the thing that we're looking for. So it can be a life or death kind of situation. But yeah, in grooming, our team of staff and volunteers are able to groom and pick out the donkey's hooves every day. So checking them over for cuts or scrapes. Donkeys are very prone to hoof care problems, so they can have thrush or white line disease in their hooves, which is very painful.
Is that partly because, like you said, they evolved for a arid desert environment, and the sorts of things they'd be walking on there would naturally wear down their hooves more than like the environments that we can provide for them in Canada?
Yeah, so it's definitely our Canadian climate that's the problem. So their hooves are actually more porous compared to horse hooves because coming from the dry desert area, they are supposed to take in as much moisture as possible, but we've had a very wet spring, and fall is also naturally very wet for us. So thrush is an anaerobic bacteria that can eat away at the hoof wall and is quite painful for them. So picking it out and making sure that it's cleaned daily as well as treating it is very important.
So in my professional career, I've worked in a number of agriculture spaces, and as part of that, I've had the opportunity to tour like a wide variety of different types of farms, largely production farms, meaning like farms where they're actually producing an output from the animal, whether it's the animals themselves or like milk or something like that. And it's really astounding the difference in how clean and how pleasant the environments that the animals lived in was at a place like the Donkey Sanctuary, where these animals aren't being used for anything. Like, you're not extracting something from their bodies or like, harvesting their bodies. They're just, they just get to live. And seeing like it's not that like the production environments are necessarily awful for the animals, and I know things like that. It's a lot of it's a matter of perspective, and what might be smelly for us might not actually impact the animals very much. But just seeing how the outcome and the goal of the operation really shapes the environment, yeah, it just kind of gave me a perspective of like, oh, some of the messiness and some of the things I've seen before aren't just because that's just how all barns are, and they have to deal with the fact that like a production barn, the end goal is the money that the animals are making the farmer and the producer, and they will kind of only be able to put so much effort into the cleanliness of things as far as it really impacts the animal's health. Versus at the Donkey Sanctuary, I guess it's twofold. It's one, it's for the animals themselves, and it's for like a touring public that might be coming to visit them. But
Yeah, so everything we do is for the donkeys and to increase their welfare. So we do operate at a very high standard of care, and part of our mission is education. So inviting the public onto the farm, as well as donkey owners or people interested in owning donkeys, to just see how to care for them and what works best in terms of setup and like the paddock and indoor space, as well as our feeding schedules. So yeah, I do agree with you. There certainly is a vast difference in terms of a production animal versus the life that we provide for the donkeys. But it's our promise to the animals that, this is their lifelong home and freedom from neglect and abuse.
yeah, I guess like to draw like a human analogy, it's sort of the difference of the environment of a office or like a factory, where that's maybe a little bit more comparable to a production barn, where it's like comfortable enough for the humans, but it's still going to be maybe a little bit too loud, maybe a little bit too bright, and just it's not optimal for us to be thriving in, but it's good enough. And I think a lot of people can maybe relate to that, where they are forced to be in environments that are just good enough for human like habitation, but they're not ideal, like in comparison to the way we can like fine tune our homes to be like ideal for us. And the donkey sanctuary, like you said, it feels more like a finely tuned home for the donkeys and not their workplace, which is kind of sad for some production animals because it means that, there is no home for them. Like they are all forever in a workplace like setting.
Yeah. uh, Yeah. No, I agree with you there. Yeah, truly, like just true to our mission, like everything is for the betterment of the animals.
Yeah. And just the fact that they, like, every donkey has a name, and there's clearly an effort from, like, both on your part and for the other staff to get to know the individual donkeys, and they're not treated like, they're not treated like exchangeable or truly like the production units, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're treated as individuals,
Yeah,
and you get to know their personalities and what they need and everything like that, right?
every animal's, yeah, deserving of their own dignity and respect, which we stick true to that value. So every donkey that comes in has a name. We do keep record of their history, and we house them based on their social and behavioral needs, as well as dietary. So we have 88 donkeys on site right now at the sanctuary, and we also have 79 donkeys in our host farm program, which I oversee. And it's very, like, it's really nice that we're able to provide the homes that we're able to. So like our host farm program, it works in a way to allow us to continue to take in new donkeys in need of a home. So
So that be
donkeys.
like, so for donkeys that are like their needs are to the point where they don't maybe need as much help as some of the other ones that live full time at the sanctuary, and they could thrive in a another environment where, like, and is it all nearby farms, like host farms? Like, what's
Yeah.
the radius of how far out they go?
So on average, they're about an hour radius from Guelph.
Okay.
We do annual check-ins and stay in constant contact with these farms because the expectation is they maintain the same standard of care as what is provided at the sanctuary. So they're still owned by the DSC. They never leave our ownership. Again, that's our promise when we take in new donkeys. But there's some that come into us that have always lived in a private home where they were the only two donkeys there, and are very much used to getting that one-on-one attention. So for those donkeys, when they come to the sanctuary, maybe they're not best suited for our groups of, we have about maybe 20 donkeys in our group housing situations. So those donkeys they're healthy, they don't need any rehabilitation, and would thrive in that kind of situation, we're able to place out in these private, knowledgeable homes.
That sounds like, and how long is that programming going on for?
That's a great question. I would say it unofficially probably started about 10 years ago. The sanctuary is about 33 years old
Okay.
at this point. So yeah, it's grown significantly. Certainly during COVID, when people were staying home at their farms and realizing they had the time to add a few more animals.
That's, I mean, knowing what most farms are like in terms of the chores and that's, I mean, it's always amazes me when people who already take on so much kind of say, "Oh, I have more capacity in my time. I can take this on." But I guess that's also true of, like, it's like the phrase of if you want something done, give it to someone who's busy, because they're already doing it. And these farmers that already have so much, like they're already up at 5 a.m. for their daily chores, adding on a little bit more chore won't really seem that significant to them versus someone who's not taking care of any animals and then is given like 2 donkeys that could be life-changing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it seems to be a lot of people who apply for the program already have horses, or mostly horses, to be honest. Maybe a few people that have goats, or have like a hobby farm with a few other animals. But yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's really great outreach for us. I love seeing responsible owners out there that want to do right by the donkeys and to provide for them.
So horses was sort of your pathway into the donkey sanctuary. What kinds of things did you have to learn coming from that background and horse expertise when you started dealing with the donkeys? Like, what were the maybe misconceptions or ideas that you came into it that you had to learn, that, like, oh no, this is how donkeys are different and how you treat them and how you have to handle them?
Yeah, I can credit a lot of what I learned about donkeys to my own mule. So I can relate with a lot of people whose I call it like a slippery slope into donkeys. So,
And
people,
just to be clear for the listeners, mules are crosses like between hybrid animals that are created between crossing a donkey and a horse.
Yes.
And it's specific to get the title of mule. There's a specific parent of each one, right?
Yeah, so a mule has a donkey father, horse mother.
Okay.
And we also have hinnies. So a hinny is a donkey mother, horse father. So it's just the swap.
And people started creating mules because they have very particular characteristics, right?
Yeah, so mules became very popular during World War II, actually, because they have the endurance of what a donkey does. They can survive on very little forage, but they have the capacity to pull and carry the weight of a horse. So the intelligence and the endurance there made them quite ideal. Mules have certainly dropped off in popularity since then. Again, I know they get the stubborn stereotype. They're incredibly intelligent, and they certainly do tend to bond with one or two people. They're not, horses love kind of any attention for the most part. Mules are a little bit more wary of new people. Again, it's just that sense of self-preservation. It's unique to them. So my mule, I love him to death. His name is Hoot.
Like an owl noise? Hoot?
Like an owl. So he was a very humbling experience for me. I did a lot of training with horses and realized very quickly that, there's a common phrase of you can tell a gelding, you can ask a mare, and you can negotiate if it's a pony. So it works very similarly that you can negotiate with a mule, you can ask a donkey, and yes, you can tell a horse what to do.
That's interesting. You threw out some other horse terms in there, and just for this to be a nice educational moment for the audience, can you walk through mares, geldings, and...
Yeah, so I can kind of go through all the terms here. So for a gelding is a castrated or neutered male horse or donkey.
Okay.
It's the same term for both. A jenny is a female donkey, and a mare is a female horse. And a jack is a stallion or an uncastrated male.
Gotcha. So
donkey.
one that's able to breed.
Able to breed, yeah. So it's, it's kind of like cats and dogs. Cats, they have servants. Dogs have, owners, kind of loyal companions, that kind of mentality.
People say that, like, dogs are very excited to be, like, part of the team, but also... they recognize you as the master versus sometimes with, I have two cats, and it can sometimes feel like, who is the dominant one in this relationship? Like, the cats sometimes give the impression that they're in charge and that you're their master, which in some ways maybe that is not an unfair way of describing it.
Yeah.
So would you say donkeys have a little bit more of that cat spirit? Like, they're a little bit more stubborn, a little bit more like they'll do it if they want to do it?
They certainly, I won't say stubborn, I'll say they have a high sense of self-preservation. So they're always going to look out for themselves first, but certainly, like, once you build a relationship with them and have that mutual trust, they're incredibly loyal. Like, they're incredibly intelligent, so they do remember individual people. And they certainly do have their favorite friendships. So it's really special with donkeys. And I think a lot of people who do meet them get a sense of that very quickly. Again, they're stoic, but we do get quite the special relationship from them.
Right. I guess it's similar to with cats. When they open up, it can be even a little bit more meaningful than when like a dog opens. Because like dogs, that can sometimes just seem like, oh, they'll befriend anyone. Why don't we kind of hop into the discussion of like what is it about donkeys, and in terms of like, what makes them special and in need of a sanctuary space in Canada, and are there like common misconceptions about them and about the reasons maybe people get them and then are unable to or don't want to take care of them anymore? Why is there a need for the donkey sanctuary?
Yeah, it's a common question. So why donkeys? That's usually the first thing that people do ask us when they come for a visit. And there's a few reasons. So donkeys, they can live past 40 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And is that, so what's a typical lifespan for a donkey? Is it in the 30s, 40s, or?
like they can live past 40, like 50. At the sanctuary, I believe our oldest was 43 years old. On average, I would say 30 is when we start considering them senior.
Okay.
But yeah, they have a significantly long lifespan. So compared to like, cattle or horses about 25 is senior. And cattle, I'm not quite sure. You can maybe answer that one a little bit better, but they don't have nearly as long of a lifespan.
I think when you get up to like 10, 15 years, like that's quite old for cattle.
Yeah. So if you think about it, if you're about mid-age and you get a donkey, it's quite a significant commitment,
Right.
for
I mean,
their
if
life.
if you're 40 yourself and then you get a donkey and then, you're 25 years later, you're wanting to retire or maybe step away from some of the farm activities or just unable to keep up like physically with the farm activities, your donkey is still, could still have 10, 15 years of its life remaining.
Yeah, so we do get a lot of intake requests from owners who are ready to retire, sell the farm, or have health issues and can no longer provide for them. We do get some neglect and abuse cases. And again, I try not to fault people because not a lot of people know that donkeys are different from horses. So
Right.
donkeys are very prone for obesity. If you keep them out on a grass pasture, again, they're desert animals, so that's like a candy store for them. They get quite overweight very quickly. And
It's
with
an
that,
interesting perspective of seeing like a lush grassy field and how it's like a luxurious benefit, but it's such a benefit that like their bodies are unable to handle it. I guess it's kind of
Yeah.
very similar to like humans deal with similar obesity issues because calories can be cheap and sugar can be plentiful, and if you go to a grocery store, some of the cheapest, most plentiful, cost-effective items are very calorically dense.
Yeah.
And our bodies just aren't really equipped to handle that. We evolved for hundreds of thousands of years of like holding on to calories and holding on to that fat because we might not get to walk into like a grocery store like environment every week. So it sounds like donkeys are kind of built in that same environment where when they have access to calories, they store it up.
They do, yeah. They're easy keepers in every sense, which is great. But yeah, that's where we get into problems, or sometimes we overlove them a little bit with a few extra treats that they certainly don't need.
So I understand that the sanctuary recently received a major donation and has been growing. How has that shaped the vision and the future of the organization? And maybe this would be a good opportunity to sort of talk about the structure of the organization and who's leading it and how are those decisions like netted out? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so we're very, very thankful for the donors and sponsors that support that we have for the sanctuary. In 2013, we got a large bequest from someone who helped us build our new facilities. So we have a dedicated training facility now, which is fantastic. It allows for us to house some animals that are a little bit more challenging. So we do get animals, donkeys and mules, that have never been handled before or don't like being touched. So being able to move them and care for them in an environment where we don't have to stress them out has significantly changed and increased our welfare practices, as well as our safety for handling when it comes to vet care. And we've expanded our donkey house. So that's our main barn where we keep most of our donkey population, which has been wonderful as well. We've been able to convert our old bank barn. It is a heritage farm. So the bank barn is now our quarantine space. So we can practice proper quarantine for 3 weeks with new intake, or if we have anybody that is doing unwell, it allows us to protect our herd health. So it's honestly, we're very, very thankful for our donors. They really do help us with achieving our vision of increasing welfare as well as education, and just providing the best that we can for the donkeys.
And and then in terms of like the structure of the organization, is it set up like a lot of nonprofits where there's a board of direct? I guess I'd say, is it set up as a nonprofit?
Yeah, so it's a non-for-profit organization. We are a registered charity, and we do have a board of directors. Janine Holman is our current editor director. She's fantastic. She's done quite a bit for the sanctuary in the past year. We're very thankful to have her. And our founder is still on the board, which is amazing too, to help with us with our vision.
Do you I'm sorry, how long have you been with the sanctuary? Did you say about 5 years?
Yeah, I've been with the sanctuary for going on 6 years now.
And wow.
Yeah.
What do you think drives people to both like donate and also donate their time and kind of get involved? Is there like a lot of overlap or commonalities between people that want to get involved, or like what do you see as the main driver?
Yeah, we do have a lot of people who are interested in just doing good for the community. We're really thankful for the network of people we have in the Guelph and Tri-City area. For the most part, our volunteers, they don't even have equine experience. So it's a really great opportunity. People are just looking to be outside and enjoying just nature and caring for animals. So we're happy to train on new volunteers how to properly care for donkeys, to spot, health concerns and grooming techniques. Yeah, the volunteer base that we have is fantastic.
Is that, I wonder, is the reason specifically to have like a donkey sanctuary? Is it because other animals, like horses, for example, there are other opportunities out there? Like there's other like horse ranches and things like that that can take on special cases of animals needing new homes and things like. And there's also more money in the, I didn't say the horse business, but I guess that's what we call it, like the entire industry of housing horses. There's more money to be made as part of that, so there's more, I guess there's less need in that space.
Yeah, so getting back to the why donkeys, so certainly their long lifespan is a factor, and owner health when it comes to them being relinquished to us, and the specialized care that donkeys require. So again, housing them like horses isn't sufficient. We do get a lot of donkeys in that have metabolic health conditions, or they have laminitis, which is rotation of the pedal bone within their hoof. It's a really painful condition for them, and it's caused by having too much protein or sugar in their diet, so it's often linked with obesity. So for horse rescues or sanctuaries, they're not able to provide the specialized care that we are here at the sanctuary. And a lot of owners recognize that unfortunately there's not a lot of knowledgeable people to care for donkeys, so that's why they reach out to us, just seeking for somebody to continue providing excellent care for them.
It must be a relief for a lot of people too to know that the animal that they have been caring for so long will be in a safe place and continue to receive such good care.
Yeah,
There must be like a relief, especially if they are dealing with health consequences or health issues of their own, or just so many farmers and so many people who care for animals. They really do take on all that responsibility as like stewards of the land and stewards for the animals. And because of that, it can be hard for them to relinquish control, because they sort of feel like, well, it's on them to take care of things. So that must be a really good benefit that the sanctuary can provide to them, where, they can tour the facility and just sort of see like, oh, my animal's going to be in safe hands.
Yeah, it is a huge lifestyle change for them when they're selling the farm. Because like you said earlier, like the farmer's up at 6 a.m. and they're extremely productive people. So when it comes time for that kind of change, we're happy to help make that transition easier, and giving them peace of mind, certainly. And yeah, being open to the public is really nice, because a lot of people know these donkeys. Like if the donkey was in a neighborhood, it's, we get old owners who visit us, or neighbors from down the road who are happy to come and see them and say hi and continue with their story.
Now, is the donkey sanctuary unique, or are there other similar organizations across the world?
Yeah, so we are actually we had a lot of support in the beginning, and we're inspired by the Donkey Sanctuary in the United Kingdom. They have an amazing organization. They're they do research as well at their farms, and they do global outreach. We're just within Canada. We do the best that we can here, but they have really helped us along in terms of resources and how to set up our farm and how to provide, again, properly for donkeys. So the Donkey Sanctuary of the UK is an amazing resource. We often refer to them when looking to help owners. There's a few other sanctuaries within Canada. There's Turtle Valley, which is in BC. They do an amazing job as well. And there's Primrose Donkey Sanctuary, which is towards Port Hope. So there's a few other charities out there, which is really nice. We're not alone. And it's amazing. I know, if you're driving down the road, you might see one or two donkeys out in a field, but there's a lot of donkeys here in Canada.
Yeah.
And again, they do live for a significant amount of time, so there certainly is a need for their specialized care.
Yeah, like a lot of farm things, people, if you don't work in the industry, or even if you do, you might work in like soybean or something like that, and donkey can be as foreign of a world as it might be to someone who's like a computer programmer, right? Where and so much of the farming world that we do see is just the farms that happen to be alongside roads and highways and things like that, but that's just like not even scratching the surface of how many animals there are. Just a total shot in the dark if you know this answer, but do you have any sense of how many donkeys there are in Canada?
I don't have that number, no. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, I guess speaking to that community, both the community of the Donkey Sanctuary and the community of Guelph, it seems to play a big role in the sanctuary's work. And what kinds of partnerships or support do you currently receive from the wider Guelph and Wellington County community?
Yeah, we heavily rely on our community. So we have a few events that occur throughout the year. We have a community work day in which we invite the public to come and help us do some yard work and clean up the property in preparation for open days. It's a really fun day out in the sun. We have done a lot of work with the Grand River Conservation Authority. We have a lot of conservation efforts at the sanctuary. We're over 200 acres, and about half of it is dedicated to our wetlands and preserving those wetlands. Planting native trees, eradicating invasive species. Our environmental committee has done some amazing work, and it's a lot of hard work for sure.
Yeah. I think there was a community garden that I saw during the tour as well.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's a lot of opportunities for people who want to be involved, even if they don't want to go anywhere near the donkeys themselves.
We have a gardening committee. If you're good at gardening, we really would benefit from your support. We've recently created, it was the pollinator garden that you saw.
Nice.
Trying to invite some more, and again, native species to live at the sanctuary.
It's also just like I can't overstate how scenic the sanctuary itself is. I mean, this is sort of true for all of the farmlands that surround Guelph, but the sanctuary especially, it's just these like gentle rolling hills and kind of little pockets of forested area that like border it. And another day we were there, it was like sunny with just like wisps of clouds going by, but the mix of like the new barn facilities as well as like some of the historic like stonework of the old houses that are there and the old barn. It's such a good example of how scenic and pretty farms can be.
Yeah, and it's incredibly serene, right?
Yeah. It's not a bad place to spend your 9 to 5 at, right? Like,
I'm very biased, but I do love what I do. That's for sure.
So speaking about what you do in your role, you've been involved in public advocacy work, such as speaking out about like media portrayals of donkeys. I know recently there was the Donkey Sanctuary spoke out against it's a recent Rona ad campaign, which is kind of admittedly like a good ad campaign, and saying that as like a marketing person. The whole part of the ad is people condemning each other of like doing a half-assed job at something, and then they've got this like donkey character that's like a half donkey. It's like the front half of a donkey. It doesn't have its back legs, kind of thing. And then it like overhears people calling each other half-ass in it, as a half donkey is saddened by it or whatever. It's kind of a cute ad, but
I would say disturbing, but
that's fair to say
Yeah.
too. Someone who works with donkeys, I mean, I've heard people. It's one of those ads that I've heard people just speaking about of like, oh, what a fun commercial. So, anecdotally, like, I guess it's an effective commercial, but maybe speak to like, why is the public perception important, and how do you approach that kind of advocacy work?
Yeah, so language does matter. Every animal should be treated with dignity and respect. That's part of our advocacy work is being stewards of the land and the animals that we are here to provide for. So, you know, the ad, it was disturbing, and it's just something that we're working to kind of change the language, because language does truly matter in how we respect and treat animals around us.
Yeah, that must be interesting because even like other popular portrayals of donkeys, like the character of Donkey from the Shrek series,
Yeah.
that's kind of a beloved character, but it's not one that inspires like respect for the character, and I guess for donkeys in general, because it plays into a lot of the stereotypes of like donkeys are lazy or they're smelly or they're like annoying to deal with and things like that.
Yeah, it's harmful at the end of the day. I mean, again, I know Donkey from Shrek, he is at the end of the day a lovable character.
Mm-hmm.
We can agree to that. But we need to be treating animals with compassion. And donkeys are more than just the butt end of the joke.
Yeah.
And anybody who meets a donkey certainly does feel how special they are. They're very kind, they're intelligent. Just because they're, a little bit more stoic in nature doesn't mean that we need to poke fun of them by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I would argue the opposite. The donkeys are a little bit more intelligent than how we perceive them as being stubborn, just because, like I said, like we have really bad ideas sometimes. Like, if a donkey is being not compliant for like vaccines, I don't blame them. Like nobody wants to be poked with a needle.
Yeah.
That's a good sense of self-preservation there. They would rather avoid that situation. So
It's also interesting too, a lot of the other animals that people deal with on a daily basis. Well, one, if they're like household pets, like dogs have been bred for tens of thousands of years to be compliant.
yeah.
And dogs that weren't compliant didn't make it or weren't bred onwards. And that's also true of some of our other animals, like sheep and things like that, right? Like the stereotypes that we have about sheep is that they're like docile and friendly, and like it's because the sheep that like we made them that way.
Yeah, that's selective breeding there.
Yeah, and like with donkeys, obviously we've been living with donkeys for a long time, but maybe some of that, like some of their particular behavioral quirks are just because they haven't had quite the same selective pressure applied to them.
I would argue that their ability and willingness to comply with humans isn't a mark of intelligence. I think that's the best way to sum it up. Just because they don't, do everything that we want them to doesn't mean that they.
You're right. It's a very
not intelligent,
anthropomorphic, like human-centered way of looking at it. Of like compliance with what we want is a mark of intelligence, when really it's just a mark of compliance.
Yeah,
and it doesn't.
It makes us feel inferior if they're not cooperating with us, right? So it's more of a mark on us. Like we can be, step it up a little bit. We can do better. How can we work with the animal in front of us? That's my training perspective, at least. But yeah, it's we don't need to be, pulling and hauling and doing these large motions in order to work with an animal. Like we can keep it quiet and again build a relationship and trust with them. And it's amazing what what kind of bonds you can ask of an animal. It's like well-trained dogs, right? Like some people don't even need to walk them on a leash. They're happy to follow along, but you got to put the work into that kind of relationship.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, a lot of this is just kind of making me think of the shorthand ways that we do talk about animals and how like the stereotypes we apply to them and things like that, and how it's not fair to the animals, but just that it's often just looking at the animal as the role that they serve. And then there's animals like horses that maybe on to like the flip side of donkeys, they get a lot of like positive PR like in our society because like the stereotypes of like the cowboy or just the fact that you can ride horses and that they've been used in war and that they've been used in there's like prestigiousness of horse racing and things like that where they are like put up on a pedestal. And the portrayals of horses in media, you get things like what's that Disney movie? I think it's is it DreamWorks? It doesn't matter. Is it like Stallion, Spirit of a Stallion, or
yeah, Spirit Stallion of the Cinema.
yeah, like horses really get the hero treatment versus donkeys do not, and that even like a beloved character like Donkey from the Shrek series, it does teach kids from an early age that they're like comic relief, that they're silly, that they're it's kind of okay to treat them badly because they're not worthy of respect, even if it's being voiced by Eddie Murphy. Like it's it's interesting how those some people would sort of say like, oh, it's just like fluffy kids entertainment or things like that, but it really will have a big impact on how generations of people view these animals and the respect and consideration that they're given.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's part of our education is we do a lot of tours with school groups and throughout the summer with camps and whatnot to kind of teach kids compassion and kindness when caring for animals because, like you said, like the media certainly does portray it a different way. So we're fighting that stereotype in our own way. But yeah, there's no need to, be using the butt end of a joke. They are incredibly intelligent creatures.
Yeah, that's fair. So I know you've talked a bit about some of the rewarding elements of working at the Donkey Sanctuary. What are some of the most impactful or rewarding stories that you've encountered from your time at the sanctuary, either like the transformation of the animals or of like the impact that transformation's had on people that have worked with them? What are some things that stand out to you there?
Yeah. From when I was training in the barns, there was one donkey in particular named Juno that was really special. She was a known abuse case that came into us where a farmer had used harsh methods to move her around. So she was not very trusting of people, understandably. She didn't like being touched. She didn't like people walking towards her or any kind of high energy. So I worked consistently just building relationship with her. So just spending time with her, gentle petting and leading her around and just making positive experiences around people. And after about a year of consistent training, it was really rewarding to see her kind of start to trust other volunteers and graduate from the program to the point where she had about 2 other people that she trusted as well, and they could halter her up, lead her out, and groom her, and she would actually start to like wiggle her lips and enjoy that kind of attention. So that was a really, really, really special moment. But definitely the outreach that we do right now, talking to people who are interested in donkeys and, again, like applying for the host farm program. So it's quite the application process, but when they're willing to work with us and change and set up their farm in order to house them properly has been really, really rewarding, and it's amazing how kind and caring some people can be out there.
It's sort of a testament to the like the wider Guelph community. This has been a theme of so many of the conversations I've had on this podcast is the community's willingness to like open up their hearts and minds and not just give like it's obviously important to give with what you can like monetarily, but also donate their time and the compassion that they're willing to give.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like, definitely Guelph is a very special area for that. I don't know, everybody just seems to be nature lovers as well, so we all seem to have the same mindset when it comes to working with animals and just being outside.
Yeah, and so many people can just recognize the innate good that a place like the Donkey Sanctuary provides just in its existence, right?
Yeah.
And that ability to connect with the animals, no doubt, inspires other sorts of giving and other kinds of ideas for the compassion that we can extend to like the wider animal kingdom that we share the earth with.
Yeah.
And these animals that, like you said, they didn't ask to be taken from their desert environment and to be brought across the world and to be bred into these different places that they're either not suited for or, yeah. And I think as humans, it's kind of the least we can do for them is like figure out ways to make their lives a little bit better.
It's our responsibility. Again, just that word of stewardship. It's the best way to talk about it. But yeah, it's amazing because everybody has good intentions, and when they're willing to learn and work with us, it's a great experience.
So for anyone that's listening who's touched by this conversation and they want to get involved, what are some of the opportunities that exist for them? And we've already kind of talked about the direct ways that people can volunteer, but are there other ways, like I guess just visiting the sanctuary in some ways and is providing support? Maybe you could speak to what are some of the other avenues that people can take that compassion and donate it towards the sanctuary?
Yeah, so if you're local to the Guelph area, Puss Lynch, you can check out our website if you're interested in volunteering. We do take in volunteers twice a year, so the next one will be in the fall. But if you're looking to visit the sanctuary and support us, we're open every Sunday from May until October. It's a great chance to, bring the family and enjoy a day at the farm. We have a picnic area as well, which is really nice to sit by the water. We also have trails.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, I can also attest that it does make for a good date location. Like I said, it was my wife and I's one of our it wasn't our first date, but one of our first major dates of like getting off campus and going to do something. It's very impactful to just, especially if you're not familiar with farms and stuff like that, to just get the opportunity to positively interact with animals and be in a farm environment. I think in that way, the sanctuary can really act as that very necessary bridge between like rural and urban communities, where like you're just outside of the city of Guelph. So for people who are growing up in urban neighborhoods or city neighborhoods where the farm can feel like a concept that's far removed from their everyday life, and you kind of give people the little opportunity to get a sense of what rural living and living in with animal husbandry is, a sense of what that's like.
We want people to connect back with nature, which is really, really, really important. So there's trails you can explore. For events, if there's any runners out there, we do have a 5-kilometer race that occurs September 29th. It's a fantastic event. I highly recommend. Even if you're not a runner, you can walk. We have 1K, or you can walk the 5K. So it goes right through our 200 acres and through the paddocks next to the donkeys. So it's just as enriching for people as it is for the donkeys to watch you
I was going to say
go by.
The donkeys must get a bit of a kick out of that too. Just like,
it's
what
exciting.
are all these people doing? I guess it must be a very different sort of day for them too, because like most days aren't filled with hundreds of people running by them like that.
Yeah, we do, like our animal care staff, we do monitor the donkeys to make sure nobody's stressed out by it. But because it's an annual event, even if we have new donkeys on property, they do take a note from our more senior population that this is okay.
That's good.
But it's enriching. It's something new for them to look at. So that's, September 29th, which is really nice. Event. We also have Christmas open days as well. So the first 3 Sundays leading up to Christmas. It's cold in the winter, so definitely dress appropriately. But we do have a Christmas carol event at the last Sunday before Christmas. The Guelph choir actually participates in that, which is a really cool event. And we do tours throughout the year, which is a great way to kind of, if you have about 8 people or so, or you're a larger family, it's a private tour, and you get the opportunity to brush donkeys and learn a little bit more one-on-one.
That's interesting. It sounds like it could also be I was going to say for like corporate work events, I guess if it's on a weekend, sometimes people don't want to do their staff event on a weekend, but if they were open to something like that, that would be really cool too.
Yeah, getting in touch with our tour guides is the best way, but we have done corporate events before, or corporate tours, volunteering. It's really, again, you're out on the farm. It's usually a nice day, hopefully. So it's a great way for the community to get involved.
My last question for you is, how do you hope people feel after visiting the donkey sanctuary? What do you want them to take back with them into their lives and communities after getting to experience what everything that the sanctuary has to offer?
Yeah, honestly, stepping away with a little bit more compassion towards donkeys. Hopefully, a different outlook on the language that you use if you're describing a donkey or a person that you would typically say is stubborn. Again, just because they're not necessarily compliant isn't a mark on their intelligence. And yeah, we really appreciate people who come and visit the sanctuary, even listening to this podcast, because your interest it helps us towards our mission in education and improving welfare.
Sorry, we had some sirens passing by. The luxuries of recording a podcast on a fairly busy street here in Guelph, but well, that's really great. And yeah, thanks so much, Grace, for not just the tour, but also this conversation today, and for all the work that you've done in your job and your career in terms of dedicating your time and efforts in order to create this place that. I mean, the word sanctuary is such a good word to describe it as a safe place and like a real haven for these animals that have, in some cases, probably experienced a lot of hardship and a lot of pain, and whether through direct abuse or through just the ignorance and neglect, you and the work that you do and the work that the rest of the staff do is no doubt doing a lot to combat that. So. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk about everything that the sanctuary is doing.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it.
And there'll be links in the show description of the website and anywhere else that people can get involved. Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Growing Guelph. I've been your host, Jordan Sloggett. Be sure to subscribe to us on social media, on your favorite podcast app, and if you have a recommendation for a future guest you'd like me to speak to, you can reach out to me at growingguelph@gmail.com.